Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We have people here. We also have people watching online. Just want to welcome you here to our HTI Friday morning coffee. My name is Nat Banks. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at HTI, and I'm going to moderate today with our two experts that I'm happy to introduce. Most of you know Herb Dew. Herb is CEO of Human Technologies, Inc. He's been involved in designing recruiting and human resource plans for, I'm going to date him, 30 years now, Herb.
Yep.
Since the circa 1982, I guess.
85.
85,
yeah.
Okay.
You're making me older than I am.
And this is our real expert, our special guest, Randy Bunch. Randy is the Director of Human Resources for Robert Bosch Corporation in Anderson, South Carolina. They are about a 1,300 person facility, tier one automotive supplier.
Right.
Welcome, Randy.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Herb, I'm going to start off with you. We're talking about co-ops and interns and those type programs. Help us understand the difference in a co-op, and an intern, and even an apprentice.
Well, first of all, when we're talking about all of these programs, it's really a program it's a company developing a program to go ahead and bring people in and train them, often while they're working either full-time or part-time, sometime during the year. So typically co-op programs, you're working with a school and you're bringing them in for maybe a semester, a year, and you may bring them in one time, or you may follow a student all the way through freshman through their senior year. So typically when they're done, they've had almost a year and a half worth of experience on the job. Internships are a little different. I mean, and Randy will talk about this with Bosch. You may have, like in our case, we have a summer internship program where we just bring people in for the summer,
right?
And we bring them into a department. In some cases, you may have overseas internships where people are coming over from overseas and coming in for a 6-month program. But typically, internships are more often sort of one-offs where somebody's coming in maybe one time versus a co-op program where you may follow somebody all the way through their career. And then apprenticeship programs, which is sort of related, is where you're bringing somebody in typically in conjunction with going to school, but they're working full or part-time while they're going through school. So you're sort of training them to start with you into a full-time job at some point in time, or they may be sitting in a full-time job at that moment.
Going back to the co-op piece, because that was longer term and it's more involved with the colleges. Are they getting college credits for any of these at any time, or how does it work as far as them being in school?
They are. I mean, most of the time, the major programs for most of the schools, at least here in South Carolina, have a very specific co-op program where they're getting college credit for coming into a role in which they're working within their major. So typically, it's not unusual for us to have a co-op, for example, with us, maybe an HR person who comes in, and then we give them something related to HR that counts towards their college credits.
Randy, expand a little bit on the intern and co-op programs at Bosch.
Yeah. They're very important at Bosch. We are actually in our business planning cycle right now, and you would be surprised at the ferocious fights that there are to get these co-ops and intern positions planned in our headcount, because we really use them as entry-level, mid-level engineers, HR experts, those types of people, because we've seen such good results from them. But from a Bosch standpoint, we use about 30 co-ops at all times, and about probably 15 to 20 interns. And as Herb said, the co-ops are typically for us are connected to a university. We typically use Clemson, Auburn, Georgia Tech, South Carolina, and Virginia Tech are probably the 5 institutions we use the most. Obviously, with demographics and locations, Clemson is the one that we use the most because it offers us a lot of flexibility from a housing standpoint. Those students stay in their own housing from a Clemson perspective, and that certainly limits the difficulties in that process. So those guys, like Herb said, come in probably at least 2 rotations we try to ask, but most of the time 3 and 4 rotations. So they'll go 1 semester to school, 1 semester at Bosch, 1 semester at school, 1 semester at Bosch. So that has worked very well for us, and we obviously increase the pay as they come back for their subsequent semesters, and they literally in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th terms are really acting as a senior or a mid-level engineer, HR professional, supply chain management, all of those types of things. We use them a lot. The internship program at Bosch is a little bit different than what Herb was describing. We don't necessarily do summer internships. We do 6-month internships, and it's primarily international associates because Bosch is an international company. So we typically are bringing associates in from overseas somewhere, even Asia, Germany is probably the main area. But these guys are typically master's students that are working on their thesis while they're at Bosch. So they'll come in and work on a specific project or in a specific area, and they usually stay about 6 months. The interns are a little bit more cost effective for us because they are choosing to come into Bosch. We pay them about a $300 or $400 stipend per month, give them housing, and then the rest is kind of on them. Whereas the co-ops are paid kind of a full salary, not benefited, but a pretty good salary to be there. So we really use them a lot in that. They are a vital part of our workforce for sure.
So help me understand the selection process. I know that in this market, from what I understand, the co-ops, even though you're interviewing the co-ops, they're interviewing with several companies.
Exactly.
So what are you looking for, and then how are you selling Bosch?
Yeah. We, and it's actually with the help of HTI for sure, we go over and interview at these co-op interview days. Most campuses have these now, and like you said, it is fierce competition. We just got the information yesterday from Clemson. They said, listen, we're concerned about filling all of your mechanical engineering positions this time that you've asked for. So you better get over here. You better get here early. You better have your best people interviewing these guys, because you're exactly right. 10, 15 years ago, they were begging to come to a place like Bosch and to have that experience. There's not so much anymore. These companies have found out what a real true pipeline this is for opportunities. So they're all there as well. So we literally have moved from bringing them on site after the interviews and waiting 2 or 3 weeks. We're offering on the spot many times at Clemson, at Auburn, because we know if they get away from us at that table, somebody else is going to get them. And then we go down to second choice, third, fourth choice, and that's not where we want to be.
Interesting. Herb, Randy mentioned partnering with HTI, and we're not an HTI commercial today, but help us understand the process of what does HTI do to help companies in their co-op program?
Well, I mean, typically what we have to do is we really need 3 months notice. So if a company tells us we need 7 co-ops, there's about a 3-month lag time to get those people ready, scheduled, selected, and on board so that they start on their rotation that they're typically going to be on. So we're canvassing, we're working with all the schools in the upstate. In some cases, we have customers that say, hey, I want a very specific need or niche. Mm-hmm. So we may have to go to a specialized school that has a supply chain management program, for example. And so our recruiting team is just out. We just have a team that really just does recruiting of co-ops and is out at campus recruiting and meeting during those campus days that Randy talked about, making sure that we have the right people. What Randy said, though, is true. It's very competitive now. I mean, it used to be, we've been working with Bosch now for years on co-op recruiting, and they have one of the best co-op programs I've seen. HTI modeled how they handled their rotational system around our co-op program. But now it's not unusual for us to be competing against 10 or 15 companies here in the upstate or more for engineering co-ops.
Randy, do you ever do a co-op to hire? I mean, if someone's been there a year and a half, does that give them an advantage?
Absolutely. We do it on 2 levels. We do it from an Anderson perspective, and of course there are a lot of benefits from hiring a co-op that has been in a 2, 3, 4 rotation for you. They know the systems, they know the people, they know the culture, and we also know them as well. So that is the main point of emphasis. When we have an entry-level position, we go straight to that co-op list. And then from a corporate perspective, Bosch has a students at Bosch program where all of the co-ops in North America go into a pool off of our recommendations, off of the site's recommendations. And those top-tier co-ops get placed all around North America because, again, Bosch understands the benefit of having someone that has worked in the culture before. So they can either get hired straight into Anderson or go into the Students at Bosch program and have opportunities all across North America.
I know at Bosch you have a program that's been very successful, the Bosch Technical Scholar Program. What's the difference? Give me the details of that.
Whereas a co-op or an intern is more from a professional standpoint and to hire entry-level professional positions that we have, the Bosch Technical Scholar Program was born out of our inability to hire the right types of technicians, production technicians, and the right number. 4 or 5 years ago, let's go back about 15 years ago, Bosch, as you know, was founded on the apprenticeship model. Bosch himself had apprentices with him at all times. We used to have the more traditional technician apprentice model that was 2 years. They would go to school for a week, come to Bosch for a week, in a 2-year cycle. budget cuts, whatever, difficult economic times, we cut that out. About 5 or 6 years ago, the war for talent on technicians got so complex and so fierce that we had to do something. So we looked at a different type of model, because that model that I just talked about has a long lead time and it's very expensive. So we weren't ready to do that quite yet. So we came up with a little hybrid program that we call this Bosch Technical Scholar Program. So instead of them coming in, right when they get out of high school and go to 2 years of college, get that degree, we are taking those individuals in their last semester or right when they graduate from a technical college like Greenville Tech or Tri-County Tech in a mechatronics program. And we put them in a 4-month program for Bosch. It's full immersion. We have a full-time instructor with those guys. The biggest piece of it is they get on the floor experience plus hands-on with our instructor for a 4-month time, and then they go right into our workforce. So it's a little bit cheaper from a longevity standpoint. It's full immersion in with our associates. The mentorship program while they're going through that lets them learn our culture, and then we are turning out 4 to 5 technicians every 4 months, which is exactly what we need right now, instead of 10 or 12 every 2 years. So we had to decrease that model a little bit, but that has been a really good program for us to staff this technician need that we have, and our organization is giving us tremendous feedback that those are really the only ones we want, instead of going outside because of the fast ramp-up curve these individuals have. So that's that apprenticeship program. It's certified with the state. We get some tax credits for that program. So it's been a real boom for us.
And your retention's been good as well.
Absolutely. Retention is higher in that, obviously, in those recruits than just our normal population.
Herb, we tend to think about these programs with large companies, but what's to keep a 6-person medical office from bringing in an accounting intern?
I actually think utilizing either co-ops or interns is just a good way to do a couple things. Number one, you create a variable cost. So, it's a program that you can start or stop anytime you need to. And I think even if you're a small office, you could be a medical office or a law office or any kind of business, bringing somebody in, first of all, it brings an energy level in when you have that young person in that you're teaching and they're hungry and they're learning. It's great for the culture within your office. But I also think what it does is, because most of the time a smaller company doesn't really have a hiring process that they really can consistently rely on. So I think if you put your effort into hiring a co-op and then sort of moving along with that co-op through 2 or 3 years, you've got the opportunity, if you need to, because you're growing a little bit, to go ahead and hire somebody and see how they work. Talking about what Randy was talking about, if I can go back one step, talking about apprenticeship programs. One of the things that we're seeing in the upstate now that's really fascinating and awesome is the apprenticeship program, like what Bosch is doing. I think a lot of companies here in the upstate are beginning to explore and do, because they're realizing the same thing that Bosch did, which is hourly talent is becoming harder and harder to find. I'll give you an example with HTI. We've started working on and already deployed this in a couple instances, the forklift academy. So we're even seeing down to material handlers, so simple material handlers, a shortage of material handlers, where having a 2-week apprenticeship program where we grow material handlers is more effective than trying to go out and compete all the time for that kind of labor. So I think what we're seeing in the upstate, which is I think the reason why the upstate's one of the best manufacturing regions in the country, is that we're innovative and fast about saying, hey, there's a shortage here. There's labor, but it doesn't have a particular skill. So how do we get that skill out into the workforce so that we can continue to grow as a region? And so that's happening all over the place.
Very good. By the way, the folks online can email a question in if they'd like. Feel free to do that. And for those of you here, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. Herb, we're talking about it on the company side. If you're a student and you're not even familiar with a co-op program, what do you need to do to get involved? Is it go through the school? Do you contact the companies? How does it work?
Honestly, I would do it both ways. I mean, if I was a college student and I had an interest to go to work for Bosch, I would reach out to Bosch and you may get lucky and make a contact that refers you, and now you have somebody that sort of endorses you. Almost every campus has an active college co-op program. So and it's amazing actually how many kids don't go and even sort of go to their co-op office and seek out that information and ask that question. I know my kids, I run a staffing company that does a lot of co-op work, but my kids didn't really understand a co-op program until I sat down and explained it to them. So I think that there are a lot of kids out there that don't know. Instead of working a semester, they could probably go ahead and do a rotation, make some money, actually see what the job is that they're getting an education for, and decide, is that what I want to do the rest of my life? Yeah. So I would start by going to your campus and seeking out that program, and then you know what? If there's a company that you really admire, reach out, and make that contact and see if that doesn't help you as well.
I know one of the things that we do here is we will go out and represent other companies in like co-op interview days, and then we can actually place them in a variety of different places wherever they're fit. They would be on our payroll, and we're billing them a certain amount. Is that the way that works?
Yeah, I mean, normally what will happen, just because most companies don't want to go through the process of bringing them on as employees and then having to go ahead and sort of let them go as employees, they can just come in on contract, and then we work the program appropriate to the pay scale of the customer. In Bosch's case, and we do the same thing, we graduate the person compensation-wise here at HTI. And a lot of companies do that, where somebody might start out as a freshman making X. Then they're a sophomore, they come through another rotation, and they're making $1.50, $2 more an hour. And I know in our case, and I think also in Bosch's case, if they're a senior, they're not too far away from entry-level starting pay, right? So that way, the company has a really good chance of having that person accept the job. And some companies make the mistake of paying too low and treating a co-op as a college intern or a summer intern. Those programs need to pay differently, I think, and we can help that. So part of our job really as a human resource solutions company is to take, and we have this happen a lot where a small company will say, I don't know how to start. So, we can do that. We can come in and help you with one, or we can come in and help you with a program that would have 5 or 10.
You mentioned pay ranges. Without giving specific numbers, how do you decide what to pay? Is there a negotiation going on in there?
We do have a set pay scale, but I think Herbert is exactly right. The war for talent is crazy. So you cannot go in and steal these students and think that you're going to get the best, the brightest, and to have the retention rates that you want. So we really pay that competitive wage, and really what Herb said is exactly right. By the time they do that third, fourth, and we even have some fifth term rotation students, they need to be very close to what that entry-level engineer or supply chain management, HR professional is going to be making, so that they feel valued, but you're also able to attract the right types of talent, for sure.
They're typically paid on an hourly basis?
They are. And we treat them as non-exempt associates, so they can work some overtime and things.
Oh, okay.
They don't have benefits, but we do give them days off and flexible schedules. I noticed one of the questions was, are there opportunities to work from home? They're treated literally just like a normal engineer, HR professional. So if they have telecommuting privileges at that facility, they can do that as well.
What type of projects might they work on? In other words, is someone telling them what to do, and or are they part of a team where they're given more input?
Yeah. At some point, I was hoping this would come out. I think the key to any good co-op, apprenticeship program, anything, is the mentor that you have that associate with. And you guys can imagine that. If you put them with someone that treats them as an administrative, co-op and do this, do that, file this, go, plan the Christmas party, those types of things, that's what you're going to get out of that student. You'll probably get one rotation out of it. But if you have a mentor that really wants that co-op there, that treats them as an entry-level or mid-level engineer, and gives them the right types of projects, really nurtures and develops that associate, that's what makes the program. So at Bosch, I'm not just saying that. We really use these individuals. We've used a third-term co-op to literally bring in a production line for Bosch. We've sent them to Germany to go run off the lines and bring it back in a 3 to 4 month semester. So these guys and gals are working on things that we need in the organization, not just using it as a developmental program. So we have to have these associates. They're not, the key with Bosch is they're not in our head count. So we have a little bit of flexibility there from a personnel capacity standpoint to use these guys.
I'm going to ask you both a more difficult question, but it sounds wonderful. What's the downside of a co-op program? What do you have to do to avoid certain risk, or what are the possible issues?
I want to go back to the question that Randy was answering, because one of the things that I think is interesting about the two of us is how different the co-op program is because of our business. So what's good about Bosch is they pretty much, their co-op program is really built vertically. I mean, they're going out and getting engineers for engineering jobs and that sort of thing. We're a general business, so when we bring a co-op in, we're doing a rotational program. So we're bringing typically a general business major, and then what we're doing is we're trying to rotate them through 3 or 4 rotations through different departments within the company. Because when we start, we don't know, is that person going to be good in sales, or is that person going to be good in operations, is that person going to be good in HR or accounting or whatever it might be. So our program is built around find a good general student, and then let's give them exposure to 2 or 3 different areas. And I agree with Randy. I think the success of a co-op program is how good the person mentoring and how well the work is developed. Because if you bring a co-op in and you just give them legwork, you just toss them everything that nobody wants to do, that person's not going to want to come work for you. Now, you may get legwork done, but I would argue that just hire a temp and let them do legwork. It's less expensive, and you won't have a person who's frustrated with not learning anything. So in our case, the difference is our people that we're recruiting are typically just generally interested in going through a co-op program, and we see potential talent, right, and then we're exposing them to different areas within the company so that at the end of 2, 3, 4 rotations, we can sit down with a person and say, okay, what did you love? What did you feel passionate towards? And did we see that? And does that match up with sort of a step forward with us after they graduate? So that's a big difference in how we're recruiting.
Question, yes.
It sounds like the mentorship is pretty important. Do you do training for your mentors?
And let me ask the question over the mic so they can hear it. Terry said it sounds like the mentorship is very important. Do you do training for your mentors? Great question.
At Bosch, we certainly do, Terry. We do about probably a week training for the mentors. We take it very seriously. They have to show us what they're going to use that co-op for. They have to go through some cultural type training. This, Gen X, Gen Y, all of that type of stuff. Hey, you do understand who you're about to start managing, because that individual could have managed, people in their generation for their whole career. So there is a huge emphasis at Bosch on training those individuals and selecting the right types of individuals, because we don't just put them with the best engineer or the best HR person. They have to have a certain personality and characteristics to do what we want them to do with those individuals.
How do you evaluate the co-op during the process, and how do you evaluate the mentor?
Yeah, good question, because we actually do touch points every month throughout the program. So in a 3.5-month semester, there are 3 touch points with the associate, with the co-op, but also with the mentors. So the mentor is feedback on the co-op, but the co-op is giving us feedback on that mentor. Do you have enough to do? Are they treating you right? Are you filing all day? What projects are you doing? And one interesting thing, I think somewhat unique to Bosch, is at the end of the term, they actually have to do at the end of their 3rd term, they have to do a presentation for our vice presidents. So every co-op knows, that 3rd term, you're going to have a project that's big enough to get in front of our vice presidents, to share your experiences throughout the entire time that you were there. And that really gives a lot of credibility to our program, I believe.
I bet there's a lot of trepidation in that as well.
There is, but that's the nature of business. I mean, if you're going to work at Bosch, you're going to do that throughout your career. So that really prepares them for what's coming up, especially if we're able to hire them at the end of those rotations.
And I know at Bosch, it's a little bit unique in that many of your associates give presentations very often. It's even down to the hourly associates.
That's right.
There's needs to present information.
That's exactly right.
That's great experience.
Yeah. And you mentioned, we can go back a little bit. I mean, some of the downfalls of a program, I would say number one is probably there is a lot of maintenance to that program. I mean, that, it doesn't come free. There's a cost associated, but I would say more from a resource and a people cost. Because somebody has to, to manage the program. You have to maybe partner with someone like HTI to help you manage that program. The mentors, you have to do training. You have to do continuous training, refresher training, those types of things. And you are dealing with students. I mean, you're not dealing with a seasoned professional typically in the organization. We still have issues with students doing student type things. I mean, sometimes they're, 18, 19, 20 years old and they make bad decisions. But again, I think that's part of who we are at Bosch to help develop those individuals, and hopefully we work through those issues and they're still, able to come on with us, because all of us probably, if we look back in our careers, had those types of decisions that were made, and thank goodness somebody worked us through those things. So we feel like that's a part of the program as well.
How does your selection process compare to your FTR process as far as selection tools and interviews and drug tests and that whole program?
It's very similar because, again, our ultimate goal out of the program is to hire these individuals. So why not do all of that up front? So it's almost really like the same process we would put an FTR through, because we don't want to have to get in the middle of that program and in their second term go, you know what, this guy's not even eligible, or this gal's not even eligible for our criteria. So it really does start at that front end.
One of the things Randy had mentioned earlier was that it gives the student a chance to understand if that's what they want to do. And I know I've seen interns in here that thought they wanted to work in HR and 6 months later realized they didn't want to recruit.
Yep.
Talk about that, Ben.
I actually think one of the greatest benefits for the student. I think one of the greatest benefits is, these kids come out of high school and for the most part, they don't know what they want to do. And then they get into college and maybe they're hanging out with somebody who majors in X. And so therefore they think they're going to major in X. And we still have a lot of work to do within our school systems to really help kids learn what they want to do. I think either interning or co-oping is a great way for a college student to begin to get a feel for business. Because how often do we get, I know in our case, and this is probably Randy's case as well, we get a college student in and we're the first place they've worked that wasn't, Chick-fil-A or Wendy's or the mall or whatever it happens to be. So it's their first exposure to working with professionals and seeing what that environment is like. And in our case, somebody comes in and now they're exposed to sales and marketing, and they're exposed to accounting, and they're exposed to industrial operations and account management. And in one internship program or one rotation, it exposes them to 8 to 10 fields. And I think often the kids walk away and say, okay, I have a better feel for, wait a minute, I'm going to be an accountant and I'm not really built for that. Or I think I want to be in sales, but I'm not sure now that that's my calling, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whereas a lot of times they just go through 4 years, they come out, they major in whatever they major in, they start working for their first time in that field, and they think, wow, I don't love this, right? Yeah. So I think that that's maybe the greatest value for a college student, is that early look at where they're going. So if they want to change direction, or if they simply want to become better and more prepared so they compete. Because I know in my case, we will hire somebody coming out of school that has an internship or a co-op program under their belt on their resume more often than we'll hire somebody that doesn't, right? Because we see that work experience as being, they're not entry level, they're above entry level because they have that experience in their application or their resume.
If there were a local company here, smaller company, let's say a machining shop,
right,
and they knew they wanted a co-op from Georgia Tech or Virginia Tech with a very specific, background and degree, they don't have the means to go there and interview and recruit. What would the process be for them to contact us, and how would we work with them?
The process of maintaining a co-op program is actually pretty complex, unless you're just going to, you can just call a college up and say, hey, I want to co-op. You're going to get probably whoever's left if you're small. So typically what we do, because we do have a lot of smaller customers that want one or two, they don't have the scale that a Bosch has. So part of our role first is to educate them, because I think what Randy said is very important. I think if you're going to have a co-op, let's make sure that you have a program so that the person feels good about the role that they're coming into, right? It doesn't have to be that complex. It may be as simple as making sure they're not just doing administrative work. So first and foremost, our role is to go ahead and teach you how to have a co-op program. Mm-hmm. Secondarily, we also help you understand, how do you set that up? What should you pay? How do we assess them? Because I like our program that we use for smaller customers has the co-op assessing, did they like it? Because we want you to learn through each rotation how to make your program better. And then after that work is done, then we say, let's go out and recruit, and let's go ahead and find where we need somebody. So do we need somebody very specialized? Maybe you're a small engineering firm and your niche, so you want somebody out of a Georgia Tech or a Vanderbilt, and you can support that. You can pay and support that. You can, because you're going to have to deal with housing. If you have somebody come in out of town, we'll deal with all those issues for you. Because we do have co-op programs where we bring people in and we put them in housing as well. So it's very complex, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, we have some customers that say, I just need 3 co-ops with a general business background, and we're going to Anderson College, and we're going to Wofford, and we're going to Furman, and we're going to Clemson, and Carolina. Yeah. So the good thing about us with a smaller company is just tell us that you want to do that, and then we'll take you through that whole process. And it's really actually not that expensive, and there's such value. So.
Yes. Yeah, she asked about the timeline for a new company here, and what would the timeline be for somebody that wanted to get into a co-op program?
Well, I'll give you an example right now. If you called up and said, I'd like a co-op this semester, that's not possible, really. You could get an intern. You could get somebody that maybe was wanting to work part-time. I mean, there could be a solution for you, but really we're beginning the process now for a January start. So we're already beginning to recruit for the winter rotation. So you'd be late for a fall rotation. But now's a good time, for example, to set that program up and build it. So even for one or two co-ops, I think what's interesting is, and I talk a lot to small businesses, when you hear about an internship program or a co-op program, people think you have to have 10, 15, 20. You don't. You can have one, right? It's very powerful. But the same work has to be done. We still need to have 3 months notice. We still need to have that time. So right now is the time to work on a January rotation, for example.
Thanks. Randy, you mentioned you guys may keep 30 co-ops at one time. You've been doing it for several years. Share with us, do you have a success story, or do you have anyone that's gone FTR that's really blossomed in your organization that began as a co-op?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have success stories at the lower, I say the mid management and upper level management, but even Mike Mansuetti as is the Robert Bosch North America president, was a co-op in the Charleston facility and in one of our early facility programs. But we have them all throughout the organization. In my organization in HR, my associate relations manager was a co-op. I actually interviewed with him 20 years ago when he was a co-op, and my predecessor had me interview with him and said, hey, this guy's kind of like you. I think you'll appreciate him. He's in our co-op program right now. And I came in as an FDR. Right. He came in at the same time. So we have kind of grown in our careers together. So there are examples like that all over Anderson. But again, from the Students at Bosch program, there are examples like that all over North America and internationally from a co-op perspective, where they have come in and really blossomed in their careers.
Yeah, amazing. Yes.
I'm Sherry McDowell.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But our local director of engineering,
sure,
started out as an intern probably 12 years ago.
Wow.
But what I want to ask you, Randy, do you do most of your recruiting in the engineering capacity through co-op programs, or do you still have to go outside? Because we know engineers are gold right now.
Yeah.
I'll share that. Sherry's from Preble. She asked Randy if they are primarily recruiting engineers from co-ops, or they're going externally as well.
Sherry, it has to be a dual-pronged approach, of course. You know, we have been very successful hiring the entry-level positions from the co-op, but sometimes the need is there where you need a specific, it's very difficult to get a ceramics engineer with 10 years of experience to bring in a ceramics line or something like that. So it certainly has been a dual-pronged approach for us. So we have to keep, these guys from an HTI perspective on the hook to say, hey, when we need that senior level engineer with a specific set of skill sets, you guys got to find it, because we just don't have that in the co-op. But as much as we can, we love to promote from within and backfill with the co-op. Promote from within and backfill with the co-op. That's kind of the model, but there's always that need. Most of the time, there's always a need to fill those one or two jobs that need that specific skill set.
Everybody, we'll be wrapping up pretty quickly, so if you have questions, feel free to jump on in. I'm going to throw another question to her. Unemployment's under 4.
Yeah.
I mean, Randy mentioned the skilled hourly, but it's everything's tough right now from a recruiting standpoint. So how can a co-op intern program enhance more so now based on the unemployment rate?
Well, let me talk a little bit about internships or apprenticeship programs. I think what we're seeing here in the upstate, and I think we're seeing this really throughout the country with the low unemployment rate, is skilled labor. Everybody's competing, and so pay rates are going up, and everybody's trying to go ahead and hire, whether it's maintenance techs or machinists or machinists. So the companies that are beginning to say, hey, instead of going out there and trying to buy the talent, we're going to invest in going to a high school and recruiting kids coming out of high school, and we're going to go ahead and help them with their education, and in return, we're going to go ahead and get a person who has a sense of loyalty to that company because you invested in them before you knew who they would be. Those programs, because we're beginning to do a lot of those throughout the upstate, those are the programs I think where, and those companies are the ones that are going to have a little bit of a head start on some of the other companies here in the upstate. So as simple as doing the forklift academy or something like that, where you're building your own material handlers, coming in with the apprenticeship program like Bosch does, where they, instead of going out and competing for maintenance techs, making the decision that we'll go out and hire rising stars, we'll invest in them, and then make them what we want them to be over 2 or 3 years. I think that's the way of the future for the upstate. So I think as companies that are not responding in a way like that are going to continue to see their labor rates rise, competing for labor. Because once you get below 4%, I mean, 2.5% of the workforce is not employable, statistically not employable. So we're all competing for 1.5% of the workforce. And so I think what you do to give yourself an edge, I think is going to keep you as being one of the more progressive companies in the upstate.
Randy, I'm going to go off the grid just a little bit and go back to your technical scholars program. But I was at a meeting recently for South Carolina Automotive Alliance, and the head of the South Carolina Manufacturing Group, he was speaking, and he kind of made a joke. He said, "We just found out that the state of South Carolina has all the Greek philosophers we need." And said, "What we really need are technicians." So talk about how do we get into the, I mentioned high schools and junior highs, and talk to not only students but also parents about the need and the quality income and quality of life that's available in the technical skilled hourly world.
That's exactly right. We have, obviously, that's a vital lifeline for us, is that 2-year degree technical associate that knows what he or she is doing. And this Bosch Technical Scholar Program has really helped us fill that void. But you're right. What we have done in probably over the past 2 to 3 years is gone out to Greenville Tech, Tri-County Tech, even Trident Tech, those types of schools, and made our presence felt. We are putting our money where our mouth is. What we were seeing, one of the reasons we needed this Bosch Technical Scholar Program, is the students that were graduating out of these 2-year degrees didn't have the hands-on, the applicable skill sets that we needed. So we actually put money back into Tri-County Tech, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to give them equipment, professors, any kind of supplies that they needed. They were very nice and named the Bosch Technical Scholar lab over there after us. That's not what we were looking for, but we just needed those individuals to have a little bit better skill set there. And that does start in the high school level. We have gone out, and you said parents and students, but I think one of the real keys is to get these guidance counselors. When these students are coming in and talking to them saying, I'm in the 10th grade, 11th grade, I don't really want to go to a 4-year school, but I don't know what else to do. Man, we tell them, push them to these, if they're technical at all, push them to these 2-year degrees. And we saw some real, some eye-popping when we had these guidance counselors over at Bosch probably 6 months ago, and started talking about the starting salaries of a 2-year degree mechatronics associate in the 60s. And you're sitting there with guidance counselors that don't even make that have 25 years with their organizations. So there is a really good lifestyle that can be made from a 2-year degree, technical degree, coming into a place like Bosch or any of those types of deals. And that word getting out there can't get there quick enough for our industry, for sure.
And they're cool jobs. I mean, they're robotics. They're not dirty.
These guys are wearing polos and dress pants to work. I mean,
you go out to Bosch and you can't tell the difference between an engineer and an operator.
Right.
I mean, when you're walking through that facility, right? And that's true in the upstate. We have so many modern, nice facilities here in the upstate. Part of that is the perception of manufacturing from 30 years ago, and us continually talking about that at the high school level. So those kids see that's an amazing job. I sat down, and I know we're getting close to ending. So I sat down about a month ago, and I was asked to meet with a young person. It was a father-in-law, actually, that asked me to meet with this kid. And I sat down with him. He had decided to go to college. He got a music degree. So he got it because that was his passion. He was passionate about music, so he got a music degree. He didn't want to teach music. And he's currently in a role here in the upstate making, say, $11 or $12 an hour and frustrated. He's been doing that for 2.5 years. And I thought to myself, somebody didn't sit down and show him, continue to have that as a passion. I mean, be a musician, but go be a maintenance technician because you're strong in math, actually. So go be a maintenance technician and make $60,000 or $70,000 a year, or more, right? So I think that that's what we have to do. We have to continue to talk about the options so that these kids that automatically think they should go get a 4-year degree, and it's not vertical. It doesn't give them a career when they step out. Will have a job working with a Bosch, making good money in a great environment. So that's part of what we're trying to do now. Let's go out and educate everybody.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys for being here. It's awesome discussion. I know I learned a lot. I know you did out there as well. If there was additional questions, how would somebody get in touch with both of you? Is there an email address they should use, or how would they like to do that? Yeah.
Mine is randy.bunch@us.bosch.com.
And I'm HDew, D-E-W, at HTIjobs.com.
And I'm in Banks at HTIjobs.com. Appreciate you being here. And again, thank you so much for our two experts.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.